what's a common characteristic between, among the most successful people in your network, including yourself?
I think this is probably apocryphal as well. There's somebody who asked Bill Gates and Warren Buffett what the number one trait of success is. My friend who's a Buffett fanatic, who knows Buffett well, follows him around the world anytime he's available, really funny kind of approach, said that they had a mutual answer. So their answer was focus, and I thought that was a really good answer, according to my friend, who again is personal friends with these guys and sees them on a fairly regular basis. Focus is one of the hardest things to do after you have a small amount of success. I think once you have a small amount of success, what ends up happening is you get distracted and you get really arrogant because you think that the way you made 10 million or 20 million or whatever your number is, it could be a bigger number, it could be a smaller number. Once you start getting that little modest success, and for me it was a bigger number than that, but you start thinking that you are the bee's knees to everything and everyone. And it's pretty crazy because, you can get pretty lucky, as I mentioned Mark Cuban, again, disparagingly, but you can get lucky and make some money. That doesn't mean you're smart. And it certainly doesn't mean you have the answer to anything, let alone everything. And so you end up in this situation where you start thinking you have the answer to everything. And other people around you wanting to get some of those millions that you just made start to reinforce that. You start to believe it. Smarter people will stick to their knitting and their domain that made them the original money. Less smart people will start to prance around into other areas, whether it's buying a basketball team or buying, something else. They'll sort of dance around and start to, and we see this with traders, right? I think Gergovin could tell you, the one guy who gets lucky on a couple trades, he starts thinking he's the greatest trader ever, and he just starts splashing around all kinds of trades that he's no business being in, and all of a sudden his money's gone. I think that is a fairly old story. So I think focus on one area, focus on what you're good at, and also really good one is time focus. So both Buffett and Gates have said many times that they want their schedule to be clear. They don't want any meetings throughout the day. And I think, in fact, Trump did this, and people really upset about this for Trump. He actually blocked out time in schedule, and he called it executive time. Now, I think he spent a lot of that time watching television, so maybe that's a well-placed criticism. But I think that the idea that a busy executive or really smart executive should be spending all of their time in meetings and like doing something specific is nuts, right? That person, if you want to be successful, should have time to think and not be in a meeting. And you can imagine if Warren Buffett was available for meetings, he would have his schedule packed with all kinds of time-wasting activities where basically, everyone in the world would want his time taken to meet and to pick his brain over something, but he probably wouldn't add much value. So he keeps his schedule clean and clear. In essence, his calendar every day is empty, which is a really the ideal place to be. And I would try to do the same thing. Budget meeting, at 6 o'clock. This type of meeting at 3 o'clock. This meeting at noon. Do I have to be in any of these? Does it really make sense for me to actually take an hour of my day and sit down and do this? Because, probably this meeting can go on just fine without me, and it probably could actually go on better without me.
24 years old, fresh out of college here, sort of wondering what stocks to sort of get into, what you suggest.
Well, you're 24, you don't have any money, so why do you care about what stocks to get into?
That's not true. I do have some money, I just don't know where to start.
I'm sure you don't have a large amount of money.
I'm not sure why you're sure of that. But
how much money do you have?
100K plus.
That's not a lot of money. You shouldn't worry about stocks. That's a waste of your time.
What should I do then?
You should worry about making money, getting paid, getting the amount of money you have to millions of dollars. It's not going to happen through the stock market. You should specialize in something that nobody else is specializing in that commands a very large premium, so that you can, charge whatever employer you have or partnership or whatever you have a lot of money. I mean, it's pretty simple, but trying to turn 50, 100, 200 grand into, a fortune is a waste of time. You're more likely to lose it. You're more likely to lose it than you are, if the best investors in the world right now are having a hard time making any money, how are you going to do it?
Fair enough.
One of the protections against protectionism being defined as like wanting to hurt progress because it's not in America or whatever. So I guess the opposite of globalism. It's a bad idea. We shouldn't be hurting the progress of economics just because it's not here in America. one of the weapons we have against it is investing in our people. And this idea that Bernie Sanders had, which I think is a very, very good idea, is to create a free, lower cost education system with respect to the post-secondary education in college, in essence. I think that if we had a bigger, wider scale sort of community college, national college system that was free or very cheap, and trained our population on new technology, like in medicine and especially biotechnology, technology itself, computer programming, this would have a profoundly great impact on our country. Stopping imports of rice from Brazil and China because we need to employ rice farmers in the U.S. is probably not a good long-term solution. It's just gonna, it's a great Band-Aid, but at the end of the day, what we need is a stronger and more educated workforce. So I think that investing in that will actually bring us more tax dollars down the road, and actually could be a great investment. Now, I've also talked about a smaller government with less spending, so one has to be very, very careful about that. And I think you can experiment with it. You can sort of experiment to see, will investing in our people create jobs, or will it just be an entitlement? If those schools are focused on STEM and not the humanities, we have enough liberal arts school. We have enough private sort of liberal arts schools that you can spend $60,000 a year and bankrupt yourself reading Shakespeare and reading Chaucer, which you can do online for free. But you can't learn JavaScript, I guess you can. But learning JavaScript in school and getting an accredited degree on computer science is something that, if we had 500,000 more comp sci graduates and 1 million more biotech graduates, the country would bring in more tax dollars. And so I think that I don't have strong opinions on this stuff because, again, it's public policy, it's sociology. It's not, my strength, but I see some wisdom in investing in the people of America. I mean, my father is a good example. My parents have no skills. I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. But they have, other than raising children, they have very, 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 very few skills outside of that. And now farming, they'd be great at. It's hard to farm in New York City. If they learn science and technology, engineering, and the medical field, they could have very high-paying jobs, and those jobs would be taxed, hopefully reasonably, and we'd have all this great progress. But they don't know where to start. There's no cheap way for them to go to college. There's no cheap way for them to get re-educated on computers and technology. It's really hard. So I think that we should try to do that. I mean, I hope that we bend over backwards to try to do that. The only candidate that was really yelling and trying to campaign for that was Bernie Sanders.
We have Indian CEO of Microsoft. We have an Indian CEO of Google. We have an Indian CEO of Adobe, Indian CEO of IBM. Indians have done very well in America. They're the real American dream. They come to America and work. They come to America and study. They come to America and they don't commit crimes, by the way. In America, in prison, where I can give you firsthand, I've been to 3 prisons, 2,000 or 3,000 people each. I maybe met one Indian person, and he was wrongfully accused. These are people that have jumped into America and have fulfilled their American dream. They come from a dirt poor place. India's average GDP per capita is like $2,000. Come to America, and they're the highest earners in our country. I met a lot of Albanians in prison. And Albania, put it this way, Albania, and I'm Albanian, so I can say this. Albania has 3 million people, okay? India has 1.5 billion people. 3 million Albanians in Albania, 1.5 billion Indians in India. And I met 10 times as many Albanians in American prison than Indians. So, just think about it. It's a culture that prizes education, a culture that prizes respect, family ties, things like that. We don't have minorities in Congress, right? We don't have younger people in Congress. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. Everybody in Congress is 100 years old. You got people in Congress where they talk about cryptocurrency or AI. They're sitting there thinking, what is going on? I don't even know what this is.
There's a big desire to sort of waste a lot of time. And I think actually if you follow this thing called Agile, which is a programming sort of solution to this. Agile works really, really well, and business should move to Agile. And maybe this is just this dawning on me like an idiot for a second. Like I had one of these, like, I think there's a meme of a guy who just had like some crazy revelation. I wrote an article about DevOps investing. DevOps is another thing from the programming world that nobody's sort of applied too much in business. And DevOps would be a really good way to approach a business. But Agile is another thing that kind of businesses don't do. There's a thing called Jira, which a lot of people are using outside of programming now. It's sort of a workflow tool. But the Agile approach, I'll let you look it up because it's pretty complicated, but it basically breaks down work into these sort of sprints. And the sprint system would be a really interesting one to apply in the corporate world. And its key is productivity. It focuses on not wasting time, which if you've ever worked for a business, you know that the corporate world is all about wasting time, and not intentionally, right? I think there are good-minded people who want to be more efficient, but the corporate world has so much waste of time. So I think that's my one piece of advice. I have so many others, but I think that's one takeaway that I think Buffett, Gates, arguably the two most successful people ever, and certainly my own 2 cents, is the 983,000th most successful person ever, or wherever I am in that pantheon. Don't waste your time. Try to be efficient, really, kind of keep your schedule clean and focus on what you're supposed to be focusing on. And Bobby Fischer's advice in chess was, people who were struggling to get over their chess plateau. His advice was focus, which is kind of like a stupid piece of advice because everybody should be focusing when they're playing chess. But you'd be surprised at how easy it is to lose focus on a position. It's hard to keep that same position in your mind for hours at a chessboard. Obviously, you don't have hours in chess, but the whole game maybe a few hours. But for 20 minutes, focused on, okay, do I do this knight sacrifice on h7? It obsess you and possess you. But if you lose your train of thought in that process, you can often get back to the same place where you have to think about that position again. And focus is really hard to keep in chess, especially if there's people around or things like that. And it's hard to focus when you're reading a book. I'm sure you can clap your hands or raise your hand if you think, have you ever been reading a book and then all of a sudden you find yourself reading the same page over again because you lost your place or you're just kind of like, lost. And focus is hard just for humans in general. Like we weren't meant to sit and read. Like our brains aren't engineered to do that. We're fighting evolution and fighting entropy every time we try to sit and read something. And a lot of us have to do that for a living, whether it's reading some code, which is much harder than reading English, or reading some technical paper published in some journal. All of that is tough. And if you misplace your focus, all of a sudden you have to read that same sentence over again. And you might lose your focus again. And all of a sudden you may have to read that whole paper again. And it's, I have this problem. So I would imagine other people hopefully have this problem too. Maybe I'm just, cognitively impaired, but I think that it's a really tough thing to do.
Investing isn't for the faint of heart. It's kind of like MMA. Why would you want to fight Brock Lesnar if you look like me? That's basically what you're doing. I'm the Brock Lesnar of investing. So why fight me? If you want to, investing is for professionals. If you want to fight with a professional, you're going to lose. Professionals are going to take your money. But if you want to succeed, you can succeed in investing if you start with no money. It's possible, but it's more likely than not that you're wasting your time. I'll show you how to do it anyway. I want to inspire people and everything, but I also want you to be realistic. For most of you should focus on your job. If someone's paying you money right now, that's a good start. And for all of you, hopefully somebody's paying you money to work, and you should become the best person at that job. Because no matter what job you're in now, you can turn that into a unbelievably successful career where you get paid millions. Even if you're working in fast food, you can, maybe that's an extreme example, but say you're a programmer or something like that, you work hard on it, you could create your own software company. You don't think about trying to take the little bit amount of money you're making, saving it, and then investing it to become rich. That doesn't happen. It's not the way it works.
So what do you think about Donald Trump?
I like Donald Trump.
I said, you like Donald Trump?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Why?
Well, why not? What's not to like? I mean, the guy's an outsider. I think we need an outsider in Washington. He's obviously a little rough around the edges, but we had two choices, and he was superior to Miss Clinton.
I think what he said. I mean, you got to be real with me. What he said, at least some of the things he said. But
yeah, well, here's the thing: when you are in the biggest competition in the history of civilization, right? Just imagine that, right? You are up against somebody to win, right? When you're in the biggest competition in the face of the earth, your goal isn't to make the most sense. Your goal isn't to be the best looking. Your goal isn't to be, the most reasonable, the most intelligent. Your goal is to win, right? Period. The end. Your goal is to win. To win an election, you have to say a lot of things, including a lot of things you don't mean. Because if you want to sit there, be poised, and make the most sense, and just kind of be the guy that's, trying to win on policy, you're going to be Jeb Bush. You're going to be Jeb Bush, you're going to lose. And if you were the guy who thinks ahead and says, I got to win 270 electoral votes, that's what I care about. Getting to the finish line with the W and not the L. And so Trump said a lot of things he didn't mean. And now you can see easily, that he's mollifying, he's compromising, he's going back to the center on a lot of things. And that's part of the game. He focused on winning the election, not on being the most PC or being the most articulate candidate. And he won. The goal is to win, not to be the most articulate candidate. If the goal is to be the most articulate candidate, he'd look more like Noam Chomsky than he did Donald Trump. But his job was to win. When you run for president, you don't hope to lose. You hope to win, and that requires galvanizing your base, energizing your base. Sometimes your base is full of people that want to hear that kind of stuff. And someone in his team made the calculation that, you know what, there's only 1 million Muslims. They all live in urban settings. Maybe I energize 50 million voters. That's a trade-off. And that trade-off made sense. Is it a dirty trade-off? Sure. Do you sometimes have to play dirty to win? It depends on your style. He wanted to win. He won. Game over. Do I think he hates Muslims? No.
But people like Vivek, it doesn't have to be only Vivek, but people like Mark Andreessen, people like Peter Thiel maybe, people who again are not the most popular people necessarily, but they're people that I think are real Americans in a lot of ways that, embody the best of America, that represent kind of this pioneering, swashbuckling kind of bootstrap sort of attitude. A lot of America that I don't like is very much an entitlement and handout state, very similar to Europe, where again, if everybody puts their hand out and nobody wants to be the one that's, providing for each extended hand, there's nothing for anyone. And there's sort of this very sort of weird sort of culture that starts to permeate, whether it's through media and so forth. So I see silver linings. For example, watching the media sort of collapse on itself is really interesting. Watching people sort of start to look for their own information, even if they're wrong sometimes. I personally think a lot of people don't really understand vaccines. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But I think that even if I disagree with the way people look at vaccines, I'm proud that people are willing to try to make up their own minds about things. And, this distrust of the media has been long overdue. And I'm happy that, the media has joined the government in the lowest ranks of folks' approval ratings, that we hold these institutions very low esteem now. And we're able to think for ourselves thanks to the internet. We're able to think for ourselves thanks to, all this innovation and technology. And
like I said, the best investment funds are having a very hard time making any amount of money. So if you think, you can do it, you're wrong, first of all. And if you're right, you're going to become a professional investor, and this is what you're here for. But don't be fooled into thinking that you can somehow, beat the markets easily or something like that. You can if you spend your whole life on the markets. And remember, there are a lot of people who spend their whole life on the markets and lose. Every day they go home from work, they're losers. 90% of Wall Street. So you want to join that rat race. It's a little like a casino. It's not for everybody. If you're looking for a get-rich-quick tip, I'm telling you there's no such thing. So you see the amount of hard work just into one stock. I think it takes 100 hours at least of work to even buy a share of one stock. That's the amount of homework I do.
If you're not prepared to do that, then, and I'm wrong, 45% of the time, 40% of the time, something like that. So that's very good, actually. It's just a matter of risk management and things like that. Yeah, exactly. Innovate, create, inspire, make something. Don't trade pieces of paper. But if you're gonna get into the game, it's sort of like the drug game. If you're gonna be slinging futures, slinging stock, you're gonna be in the game. I'll teach you the game. I con people out of money. I don't know about that. You might want to read the facts on that. You want to slang with me? Let's rock.